Welcome back to Raised by Giants live discussion. Good to see everyone. Welcome everyone in the chat and any moderators and channel members out there. Anyone that's listening to the replay, thanks for joining us. And if you're listening on audio, welcome. If you're watching on YouTube or X, please be sure to follow the show on the audio only podcast. You can set it to where the shows I post are automatically downloaded upon release. I personally like to listen to audio only versions so I can do other things while I'm listening. So follow Raised by Giants on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcasts so you never miss a show. Links are in the description. A Clockwork Shining is also now available on Tubi. Anywhere you can download the Tubi app, you can now watch the documentary A Clockwork Shining on Tubi. So even if you've seen it already on Amazon Prime, watch it again on Tubi. I have the link pinned to the top of the chat, and it's also in the description. So with that down, a warm welcome back to the show, author, filmmaker, writer, and producer, and star of our documentaries, A Clockwork Shining, The Kubrick's Odyssey 3 on Amazon Prime and Tubi, and as well as JFKX, Solving the Crime of the Century on Amazon Prime and Tubi. Jay Weidner, welcome back to the show. How's it going?
Hey, it's going good, Ryder. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Jay. I'm doing great, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation we're about to have here because, and the more that I think about this whole UFO phenomenon, okay, it's obviously not a physical phenomenon. If it was, then we would already have the evidence by now, right? And what everyone hinges this entire phenomenon on is the Roswell incident, which I 100% believe was like some kind of test flight, right, for a top secret technology. It's just a coincidence that that part in Roswell is the largest test flight, testing landing strip anywhere in the United States, and still is to this very day. And probably that craft had some kind of, I don't know, monkeys in it or something. But you would think that if these were real 100% aliens flying around in physical craft, then we'd know by now because there would be hardcore 100% undeniable proof. So then the question becomes, if it's not physical in nature, then what is it? And I've gone back and forth on this so many times, between thinking that a lot of it is our advanced military technology, which I do believe a large portion of it is still, but like the physical things that we see in the sky, right? But if it's not physical, then what is it, Jay?
Well, I don't know. I think it might be. I think it's physical. I think people are seeing stuff. I've seen. I think I saw advanced military aircraft, but I don't think it was alien. My problem with the alien hypothesis has been and always will be the immune system problem. If you don't live here on Earth and develop an immune system that will stop, insects and plants from killing you, and you come from another place with the immune system that didn't develop here, you're not going to last long unless you're in some kind of prophylactic suit that will protect you. So that's my biggest problem, the one I've always had with it. So then the answer becomes, okay, well, so what's going on here? Are they, do they live here with us? And there's advanced civilization. That could be one thing. I know that somebody's up on the moon. I don't know who it is. It could be us, but somebody's up there building stuff and things. The problem with all of this is, of course, our technology is a lot more advanced than they're letting on. And so therefore we're stymied when we see it. And they are definitely using the alien as a cover for the secret space program and all that. But the real question is that people have been all through history have seen UFOs and had encounters with them and things. And so, what is really going on here? Mac Tonnies, the writer, he wrote a book called The Crypto-Terrestrial. And here's his book here, The Crypto-Terrestrial, in which he posits, this is a really good book, by the way, in which he posits that they live here. They've always lived here with us somewhere. He doesn't say where. It could be under the sea, it could be underground, and that that they interact with us and they live here. That's why they don't have any problem with the environment and all that. And the really interesting point of view is this guy, Dr. Jacques Vallée. Yes, that's the crypto terrestrial book by Mac Tonnies, by the way, died. He was like 41 years old. He died about within a year of that book coming out, which I thought was kind of odd. And I kind of can't really find out what he died of. If anybody knows, we'd love to find out. But it was a real shame because it's a really good book. The second book is called Messengers of Deception by Jacques Vallée. This is his masterpiece, I think. And Jacques Vallée, in his book, he says that the UFO phenomena is being controlled by some kind of force. Yeah, and that's what's really interesting about that cover is I was friends with the artist that did that cover. And I saw him working on it. I had no idea what he was working on. And then later when I bought the book, I realized that he had been working on the cover of really what I think is Jacques Vallée's greatest book. But Jacques Vallée in this book, he says that the UFO phenomena is like a mind control phenomena used to control and push society. And that cults are frequently associated with all of this. And I got interested in all of this when Corey Goode was going after everybody, and I realized that he was creating a UFO cult, and I got into it. And I did this work like 6 years ago, but several cults have gigantic UFO connections. The Nation of Islam, Elijah Muhammad, that's a UFO cult. Louis Farrakhan, that's a UFO cult. They believe that aliens are going to come and kill all the white people, and that's the big part of their religion. Also, as you know, who was the people that killed themselves? What was they called? The
Heaven's Gate.
Yeah, Heaven's Gate was a UFO cult. They believe they're in contact with aliens and the whole thing. And then there's the Subud, which is out of Indonesia, of which Obama is associated with. So Subud was an Indonesian. Yeah, the guy on the left was an Indonesian. And when he was 18 years old, he saw a UFO. And the UFO flew over his head and zapped him. And he had this huge vision and got the whole spiritual download of the Subud cult. And then Barack Obama's mom was part of the Subud cult. And she moved to Indonesia to be in the Subud cult. When Barack was 5 years old, and that is Subud right there, and that's Obama on the right. And we know that Obama's mom liked to sleep around, and so I don't know, is Barack Obama the son of a UFO cult leader? It very well could be so. And what's interesting about that story, and I want to get back to the original thesis that we're working on, is that in 2016, I think it was, Trump was going around saying, well, he was demanding to see a Barack birth certificate. And then, what's her name? Elizabeth Fuddy. No, Letitia Fuddy got elected Health and Human Service leader in Hawaii, and she released the birth certificate, which we know is a fraud. It was done on Adobe Illustrator, which wasn't around in 1962. And then she died in a plane crash. We then later found out that she was also a member of the Subud cult. So the Subud cult is a big cult that people don't understand. And again, just like Jacques Vallée says in the book, there's just way too much occult stuff and in the UFO community, and too much UFO stuff in the occult community, and these guys are all working together. And he says that they're working to change society. that they're trying to change societal norms, in which nobody changed societal norms more than that guy on the right there on the screen. He was, in my life, he was the number one force for change, and not all of it very good either. And so what is this all about? And and there's also this guy on YouTube. He's I forget his last name. He's a doctor. It's called Custodian File. And what he does is he sits and he just sits on his Malibu deck with good cameras, and he films aircraft going by on the water on the Pacific Ocean, and he slows the cameras way down when he's playing it back, and you can see these little objects are chasing after all of the flying objects that are going by and forth. And other people around the world have started doing this, and they have the same thing. They're discovering the same thing, that there's something that you can't see. It's moving at about 2,000 miles an hour, so you have to slow the camera down to even be able to see it. So there's something tagging aircraft and possibly tagging humans that is invisible to the human eye, and makes me think that UFOs, at least some of them, are some kind of surveillance system. And that they're checking aircraft out, they're checking us out, and they're moving so fast we can't see them. And again, with new equipment, we're starting to see this stuff. So then, what is it? Who's doing the surveilling? Is it the U.S. military? And why have UFOs been seen going back all the way since the dawn of man? Akhenaten, the Egyptian leader, he was walking down the Nile one day, and he saw a flying disc. It flew right over his head. It stopped right over his head, and then it told him to start a new religion that worshiped the sun. And he went back and just wreaked havoc on Egypt, forcing the Egyptians to accept his religion of sun worship, which was really a disc, round disc with wings. And so over and over, we see the UFO having this effect on culture and moving it and shaping it. And, and you notice I'm not saying aliens, because Akhenaten didn't see an alien. The UFO told him to do it, right? And so over and over in history, we see that religions and cults are shaped by UFOs. And you have to ask yourself, what's really going on?
I brought up on a previous show, because you just mentioned the moon a little bit ago, and why NASA doesn't have a lunar rover on the moon. Okay. And people came after me about this. They were like, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. There's several lunar rovers up." Well, yeah, the ones that they apparently left from Apollo 11, those are the only NASA lunar rovers. That there is no operational NASA lunar rover currently on the moon, and never has been since the supposed Apollo 11 mission, where they were driving around in the lunar rover. Okay. But we have a rover on Mars that's roughly 34 million miles away. Why do we not have a NASA rover on the moon? The moon is roughly around 238,000 miles away.
Yep.
Okay, why do we not have one up there?
Because it would show everything that's up there, and they can't risk it. And also, it would prove, naturally, if you had a lunar rover, you'd want to send it over to Apollo 11 and 12 and 14 and 15 and 16 and 17 and see the sights and stuff, right? So,
wouldn't that just clear everything up, right? Wouldn't that clear all the conspiracies up, like shut them down like once and for all, if they just had a lunar rover up there that was taking pictures, and we can get a live feed like we supposedly got a live feed in 1969, broadcasted everywhere from a giant freaking VHF, like a big giant camcorder that they had to put on their shoulder, and they would have to look through the viewfinder through an astronaut suit to see what they were even shooting. You know this. Anybody that's a filmmaker that's ever messed around with cameras back in the day, those giant video cameras that you had to put on your shoulder and
One.
look through a freaking viewfinder to see exactly what you were shooting. If you weren't able to look through the viewfinder, you would have no idea if your shot was in focus. You would have no idea what the subject of what you were shooting. You would just be like, but we get these pristine, perfect in frame photos on the moon. It makes zero sense. And not only that, we didn't even have the ability, and I don't want to get too much off on the moon because it's about, we're talking about UFOs here, but the logistics don't make any sense. Just a couple of years before that was one of the very first live transmissions from other countries. And that first concert was that first long form broadcast to the United States was a Beatles concert. And it only lasted, I believe, around 45 to 50 minutes because that's all that we could handle just broadcasting from a different country into the United States live. But yet, a couple of years later in 1969, we're able to broadcast to 2,800 and some miles away live from the moon.
Yeah, well, you know how I feel about that. But it's a really great question, and I've told the story before, but back in '94, Richard Hoagland and I had this whole plan to launch a rocket to the moon with a camera and orbit the moon and go over all the sites and have it be an IMAX movie. I think 40 minutes it was going to be long, and we had investors, we had everything lined up, and then NASA got informed of it and told the investors that if you shoot a rocket up to the moon, we'll blow it out of the sky. So nobody's allowed to see what's up on the moon. Now, Bruce Seasall, who's now dead, he was a young man too. He had a really great setup with the telescope, and he's got a channel on YouTube still up there called Bruce Sees All, and he would just videotape the moon with a high res video every night, and he was pulling up stuff that was just unbelievable. He was pulling up structures and pipes and what looked like runways, and he's like, "What the heck, man?" It looked like really like a really busy place. And then, and I should have warned him. I felt bad because I was warned by very serious people that I needed to stay away from the moon back in '94. And so when I was watching Bruce Sees All, I felt a couple of times like I should, text him or something and tell him to be careful because that's really verboten. And Bruce Sees All didn't even make it very far before he mysteriously died also. So, yeah, there's things that they don't want you to see or know. Now, my theory on all of this is that there appears to be a surveillance system, and what is it that they're surveilling? And I believe that they're surveilling anyone who comes up with free energy. That's the verboten thing for the human race. We cannot have free energy for various reasons. I've heard that you will blow up the planet with it or whatever. I've heard that from very good sources, because every time that somebody gets close to it, something bad happens to them, whether it's Stanley Meyer with his car or the guy who used to run that the Free Energy magazine. I forget his name now, but he died in a mysterious burglary. Eric Dollard, who achieved it and then had his whole company and everything just destroyed. So it's really not allowed. And that may be what the surveillance system is watching, is making sure that nobody ever has that come out for whatever reason. I mean, even Tesla got destroyed when he came up with it. So,
yeah, that seems to be what's going on, and they want to suppress something. They want to suppress our either our consciousness or the innovation of technology, let it come out slowly, drip it. But then when you think of like, whenever you go back through, history and you like look at these people that were communicating with like what they would call angels, right? Like John Dee and
Yep.
Edward Kelly in the 1550s. Okay, they were supposedly contacting, Enochian angels that was giving them all of this information, and they were some of the first people that started using like these scrying mirrors, right? And like crystal ball mirrors. This is how they said that the Enochian angels like would communicate with them was like through scrying devices and like a crystal ball mirror. And then whenever you take a gander at your phone here, like whenever you have the phone on lock and the phone isn't on, it's a mirror reflection of you. Okay, you see yourself in the screen. I am 100% convinced that somehow these entities got in contact with us to try and get us to create the technology that we're currently using now. And the technology that we're currently using now, and that we may have way greater advanced technology, is then how they are going to interface with us. And they have been interfacing with us through our technology. They needed a physical entity to build the technology for them here so then they can inhabit that technology. I don't know if that makes sense or not, if I'm completely on the woo woo train or not, but it makes sense. And then when you look at like Marina, what was her name? Marina Orsanage or whatever, in during World War II, which I don't know if the story is real or not. It may just be a complete fiction, but she was what was the she was contacting
I can't remember the star now. It's in Taurus. But yeah, she
Aldebaran.
was
It was the Aldebarans.
Aldebaran, yeah. And she was channeling beings from Aldebaran, and then they gave her the plans to make a flying saucer, and then from there she knew Hess, and he was part of her little occult thing, Rudolf Hess, and he took the plans back with him and showed the Germans, and then began building the bell using heavy electromagnetic fields generated by spinning mercury. And that's also when the UFOs started appearing all over the place and looked just like the bell. And again, over and over, you see the same thing happening. And I forget his name now. His first name is Jack. He's a famous physicist. Somebody might remember his last name. He's still alive. He's about 80 years old, and he grew up in, I think, Brooklyn. And he said that when he was a kid in the early 50s, the phone would ring, and he would pick it up, and it would be a robotic voice telling him that they were in a spaceship orbiting the Earth, and then start downloading high-level physics to Jack. We'll remember his name. Somebody out there will remember his name. And Jack is now a high-level physicist and has been his whole life, and attributes all of it to these weird phone calls that he received when he was a kid. His mom, saw him talking on the phone one day, and she, grabbed the phone and said, "Who is this?" And the voice went away and never came back and never made another phone call. So again, we see this the other. Terrence McKenna used to call it the other because he didn't know what to call it. And he said the other reaches into our reality and, messes with us and then pulls back out. And we're like, what happened? And we don't know what happened. And so I really actually believe that we're dealing with a species that has spiritual qualities, and it's driving us into a direction. What that direction is, I have no idea. However, I will say this: there hasn't been a nuclear war. We've had nuclear weapons my entire life, and I was raised, in an environment where a nuclear war was imminent any second. And I know about how easy it would be to start a nuclear war and it hasn't happened. And that tells me there has to be like some third party somewhere who's making dang sure that it doesn't happen. And the same thing's true with aliens. Okay, so ever since people started having their little rendezvous with alien races, the aliens have a message, a universal message from the 1950s till now, and that is, you're destroying the planet. You got to stop what you're doing, right? And it's like, why are aliens caring about the planet? They're not from here. And so again, what is really going on here? And the answer is that the UFOs and I guess aliens are a control mechanism of some kind, a surveillance mechanism of some kind, used to redirect human culture, society, and consciousness into a unknown direction.
It seems like the agenda is transhumanism, robotics, AI, and this like completely 100% surveillance state of every single person and every human being on the face of the planet. That's what it seems like it's pushing towards. And that's interesting with you're talking about this nuclear war stuff. I just had a friend of mine on the other day that worked at the Air Force Base where the Maelstrom event happened in the 60s. And then he said that there was another event that he was actually there for, that the exact same thing happened in 2001, where all the nuclear, like all the power to the nuclear missiles got disconnected for like 1 to 2 minutes, like randomly. And all that he was told was that it was something similar to like what happened before, but that's a very unreported one. No one really knows about that one. And in 2001,
there have been many. I had a friend who investigated that whole thing, and he did a thorough deep dive for years on the whole subject, interviewed military people and stuff, and he concluded, and this is 30 years ago, he concluded that there are no rockets with active nuclear devices on them. They may have a nuclear device, but they've been deactivated. And he said the aliens are the first ones that deactivated it, but somehow they convinced the world not to do it. And so I don't believe there are any nuclear weapons actually right now that are active. And again, I think it's this third-party force that we're talking about, making dang sure it doesn't happen. So, I mean, how hard would it be to, if you were advanced race, you survived the catastrophe somehow that would happen 12,000 years ago, and I have good evidence right here where I live that mountains have been hollowed out 12,000 years ago. So somehow some advanced people knew that this thing was coming, whatever the catastrophe was, and we can disagree on whatever that was, but it did happen because we know, because there's a layer of iridium over the whole planet. So we know something from iridium only comes from outer space. So we know that something from outer space somehow got into the planet 12,000 years ago. So that's where the layer is. So advanced race somehow knows that this object is coming at them, and they, with their super high technology, build something underground to survive high up. And then they now have control over the whole planet with their technology. It actually makes a lot of sense. And why would they tell us anything about them? They wouldn't. And so in the end, I kind of think the crypto-terrestrial theory is probably more close to what's really going on. And they're highly advanced, and they're probably the ones up on the moon, and they're probably made a treaty with the secret space program. And Elon is probably, sending rockets up in space so he can see if he can find them, the remnants or, their technology that's up there. So I think everybody kind of knows it, and they're kind of, just being coy about it. Elon actually, doesn't even, apparently Elon doesn't even believe in that there is any of this high tech. That's why he's using rockets. It's like, dude, why are you using rockets? It's so 1960s, and yet he is, and he won't even, you know, venture a belief that there might be a higher, better, faster way to get into space that the secret space program has. So once you combine the secret space program with possible crypto terrestrials, and then they are worried about our effect on the environment. So they're pushing and guiding us towards a planet that they believe is better and safer than the one that they are now currently residing with us on. And I think that's probably the most logical explanation.
Well, when you bring up secret space program, you're referring to like a top secret black ops operation that may be going on in space. You're not referring to this nonsense garbage 20 and back programs fighting aliens on Mars and like on the moon and like all of that, right? I just want to clarify that because some people can get confused that
No,
you
no,
know,
no.
is that here you say secret space program, they're like, oh, the secret space program is real, the 20 back program is real, they got med beds and blah blah blah, they're gonna come and save us. You know what I mean? So I think it's just clarifying that.
Yeah, med beds aren't real. 20 and back isn't real. None of that's real. But there is a secret space program. Of course, there'd have to be. You know, because you're developing all this high technology, and are you developing it? You're developing it for two reasons, and they're both in Sun Tzu's war book. You want the high ground, and you want surprise. That's how you win all wars, right? Up there is the high ground, and don't tell anybody what you got is your surprise. And I know for certain that we have a weapon. I've been told by upper people in the military, we have a weapon that is so badass that nobody will ever mess with us ever. And you know, and I think that's one of the reasons why no one's messed with us. And and you know, they just admitted what in the last 3 or 4 weeks, the Trump administration has admitted twice that they have technology that can control time and space. He's like, what? They're admitting it, you know, and why are they doing that? Well, the reason they're doing that is that the only way that we can get out of our present difficulty is through the quick application of super high technology. And Terrence McKenna used to tell me that the future was not going to happen at all, and then it'll all happen at once. You know, there's that slogan, sometimes decades happen in weeks, right? Well, we're in that right now. We're in that where all of a sudden, all of the future is going to happen at once. And all this technology that's been hidden is now going to be released. That's why Trump appointed that guy to run the Navy because he's a high tech businessman. So, because the big problem here is they can't release the technology because then they would have to explain the pedigree, where this technology came from, and how long have you been sitting on this, right? They don't want to answer any of those questions. So what they're going to do is they're going to create shell companies that are magically going to create this technology. You'll see, just like Steve Jobs magically created the Apple and the iPhone and the iPad and all that, which I don't believe he created. I believe it came from the secret space program, and I believe that that's what's about to happen here. Is they're going to start, we're going to have magical technology in like 2 years. And that they do it this way with shell companies, then they don't have to explain where it came from and how it was invented. And that's what they're going to do. And, you know, I've been told by people high up in intelligence circles that the aliens are going to make themselves known. But the problem is, I've been being told this for 20 years. The last person that told me 5 years ago that within 2 years, this guy high up, within 2 years, aliens are going to make themselves known. And yet they never make themselves known. And so, you know, I'm not betting on us seeing any aliens anytime soon.
I think that they're already here, and I think that it is our technology. And when you look at them more as like an entity, like a consciousness entity, it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah,
You know,
well, anybody that's taken,
like whether you think that that's a demonic entity or not, I can see where people think that it's like a demonic entity, especially with, talking with Jerry Marzinski and reading his book, and
Yep.
how, these schizophrenics have these, he believes, like a demonic attachment, because it's always something really negative. Like they're always, berating the schizophrenics and telling them that they're awful people and that they need to kill themselves or kill somebody else or whatever. I can see where you can get that it can be a demonic entity, but it makes a lot of sense. And like, do you remember that episode of Joe Rogan with Alex Jones? And it was one of the banned episodes. I might actually find a clip here, but there's where Alex was talking about how these like high ranking top people, I think he said San Francisco or something. There was like an alien base there or something. And then they were taking high amounts of DMT and then communicating with these aliens.
Yep.
They were making like these deals between like the aliens and like, I think he said intergalactic deals. I'll let you respond and I'll see if I can find a clip really quick so we can listen to it.
Yeah, no, that's what anybody that's taken heavy doses of psychedelics beats entities, and they talk to each other. I mean, I've talked to entities under heroic doses of mushrooms and DMT, and it's just as real as talking to you. I mean, so, and I got information I didn't know, right? And so, yeah, I mean, that's the thing is we're dealing with what Terrence called the other, and it's just on the other side of the veil. And sometimes the veil breaks through. But problem with this whole thing is that just like humans, there's good and bad discarnate entities. And you must protect yourself from letting in any of these discarnate entities, because you never know what they're really like. And they're going to lie to you, and they're going to tell you things. And just like Jerry Marzinski said when he interviewed the demon at the mental institution. The demon said, he said, "Why do you torment this poor guy?" And the demon said, "Because he believes everything I say. I can't believe that anyone can believe the BS I'm spewing out." And it's like, that's what they do. And I was just on a show with Steve Campion. We were talking about, David Wilcock has who is it? Oh, Archangel Michael telling him information all the time, and it's always wrong. That's because that's what they do. They tell you lies, and then when you start believing it, then you give them great satisfaction. So we're dealing with two different levels. There are physical things going on, and then there's a spiritual thing going on, and sometimes they mix together. That's what Jacques Vallée, in his really good books like Dimensions, talks about, how alien encounters are just like encounters with the fairy kingdom or goblins in the old days. Great book, Fairy Faith in Celtic Countries, is written in like 1920, is all about the encounters. He went and interviewed Irish and Scottish people about their encounters with the fairy folk. And the fairy folk would come into the bedroom at night, they would steal the children, would do all sorts of things. And it looked a lot like the aliens. They were short and had pale skin and, big eyes. And so, again, where does the physical and the non-physical meet? And I think that's the question that we're really asking here. And what are UFOs really? Is it a transdimensional surveillance system? Maybe the UFOs are actually watching for aliens or outside invaders and making sure they're not going to get in. So I don't know. It's a great question. And it's one that's, been asked now for probably about 50 years, ever since psychedelics really got discovered and people started asking themselves, well, what is that going on over there? And, and psychedelics are not to be taken like a recreation. Psychedelics are to be taken strictly seriously by serious people who are not going there to, act like idiots. They're going there because there's something there, and it deserves everybody's attention. Everybody that takes DMT always meets the machine elves. these little elves that have kind of a rickety movement to them, and they make noises and stuff. And everybody meets them that takes DMT. It takes ayahuasca, I mean, which is DMT. What is it? My contention is that we are surrounded by a invisible world. I'm making a series right now called The Invisible Universe. And I believe that our limited eyes and our limited hearing cannot see the entire spectrum. And so right now in this room, there's living, breathing beings that are invisible here. And psychedelics allow you to sometimes see them. And John Dee and Edward Kelly were very likely, by the way, also taking psychedelics during these sessions. We now know that psychedelics were much more ubiquitous all over the world than we ever dreamed before. There's a book called The Keys to Immortality. It came out about 2 years ago. Great book about this. The guy goes all the way back through history and shows you how everybody had some kind of psychedelic in their culture. And that's just been missing from our history. We didn't realize that, the witch that was making the potion was using, a mushroom that she found in the woods, right? And that kind of stuff. So the blending of the realities is really the most fascinating thing, I think, going on. And, then you have to include things like, ghost encounters in this, and all of it. And it's all about our interacting with this invisible universe, and this invisible universe is here with us. So it's pushing us towards the dynamic that it wants, and it's more powerful than us by far. And that's what I really think is going on here. And I hope to demonstrate that in my series if I ever get it done. But I think there's a lot to it. And there's this report that came out in February 24, scientific report about the living plasmas in the atmosphere and how they seem to have sentience and intelligence. And this is a report by astrophysicists who, have picked up the stuff on video and examined it. And they seem to have predatory nature about them too, where they go after people and go after each other. So I think that this is going to become more and more obvious that we're sharing this place with a vast sea of intelligences that we can't see.
Well, you know what Bob Lazar and George Knapp all say about this is that the big secret that the government is holding back about the UFO and the alien phenomena is that the extraterrestrial intelligences see us as containers, right? But that is what a non-human intelligence AI system would also see us as.
That's a great point.
NHI, non-human intelligence, is interchangeable with AI. AI is also non-human intelligence. See, there's multiple meanings and multiple layers to the words and the phrases that is popular and that they use.
It's a great point. I can't deny it. And consciousness, so there's all this discarnate, that means without body, discarnate entities all around us, right? And they're called jinn and archons and demons and angels, and there's all sorts of fairies and all sorts of names for them. But one of them was, nefarious and wanted to occupy a body, because you can only have true consciousness once you are in a body. So consciousness, once it gets into a body, can now deal with the outside world. All right. So when consciousness enters a dog, it's dog consciousness. We call it, the dog has instincts. It knows how to protect itself. It knows how to dig up bones and stuff. No, it's dog consciousness. Cat consciousness, same thing. It chases after mice, right? Well, that's because that's what cat consciousness does. And there's human consciousness. And then there's consciousnesses of entities that are invisible, that have bodies, we just can't see the bodies. But your point is well taken. What if the ultimate goal of the archons or whatever they are is to become embodied. And the only way that they can become embodied is through AI and then through robots and that kind of stuff. And that really, I mean, that goes with Rudolf Steiner's theories about the return of these super evil forces in the 21st century. And he said we're going to do just what you just said, really, embody themselves here in the third dimension.
And they're going to have us do it for them. That's the way that it's always worked, and that's the way that it's going to be until they can come into our reality in some form of physical existence, and that will be through a AI robotics, completely 100% synthetic being. Like that would be the empty shell. That would be the 100% empty shell, empty vessel container, as if it is 100% robotic. And that's another thing that Alex Jones also talked about in this exact same Joe Rogan episode that I was referring to, which we're going to listen to that clip here in just a second. I have it brought up here. But he also talked about how his dad was a top secret engineer and that he was creating human cyborgs. Like way back when Alex Jones was a kid and he was growing up, and his dad was telling him around the dinner table that they're working on these human cyborgs. Okay, like it's all connected and it all makes sense when you think about it in that light. Like they need the technology to be able to essentially, I guess you can think of it as like an incarnation. In order to incarnate in here and not have to fight out another being or another consciousness for the body anymore, they would just be printing 3D printing bodies for them to inhabit, to like come down. And it's like Star Wars Clone Wars is what it seems like. But here's the Alex Jones clip about him talking about these high up people taking high amounts of DMT and contacting aliens and making intergalactic deals. Here it is.
Okay, because this is not my opinion. This is the real research that I have heard, that I have talked to Army generals, commanding generals, major generals, generals, CIA, everybody, and they're all 100%. And I thought it was a psyop before, and then I've researched it. I've talked to hundreds of people now, not on air, but I'm going to make a film on this, who've taken ayahuasca and DMT. I've not taken it, and for obvious reasons. And
could you imagine Alex Jones on ayahuasca or DMT? That would explode his brain. You wouldn't be able to handle it. All right, let's finish.
And it's unbelievable because, I mean, they 100% in San Francisco is the main project site, literally have an alien base, and they are literally communicating, and they've got like astronaut level people taking super hardcore levels of drugs and going into meetings with these things and making intergalactic deals. And again, that's what the government believes and says they're doing.
I totally believe it. Totally believe it, because I know that they developed. The problem with DMT is it used to be called the businessman's lunch because it only lasts 5 minutes, but it feels like 4 hours to the person taking it. But in time, only 5 minutes go by. So they know that I heard at least 10 years ago or so that they had developed a DMT that was continuous and that we were in it for hours and hours. I can't even imagine. I mean, I just can't even imagine. Like, holy moly. But I have no doubt that that's real. I mean, all of the Silicon Valley dudes are take DMT. They get a lot of their designs, their software designs from taking DMT. They admit it. There's a book out about it, about how all these guys at Silicon Valley who developed all this really cool stuff got it from taking DMT and ayahuasca. So it has psychedelics have had a lot bigger effect on our culture than we've given them credit for. And I personally think that that's why people believe in aliens, is because they took a psychedelic and they met some of the entities, and they're so real that you believe that. I mean, they are real to me. The ones I met are actually real. They just can't exist in my 3D world. So yeah, it's an incredible subject, and actually, a film should be done on this subject. Actually,
Well, I mean, it makes logical sense when it's an entity, it's something that you can't see, it's a consciousness that's outside of this 3D physical reality. It contacts us, whether it comes to us in a dream or whenever we're, have natural DMT, because you can also unlock natural DMT.
absolutely, it's endogenous. You can make DMT within you just using light and dark practices. Serotonin is one atom away from dimethyltryptamine. So in ancient cultures, and still today in like Tibet and in Peru, what they do is you fool the pineal gland. And what you do is you go in the dark for 3 days, and then you get flashed by the rising sun for 5 minutes. You will get the most endogenous DMT trip, and it's you. So that's why it's very spiritual. I haven't done it, but I'm intending to do it. So you don't have to take drugs. Your brain is filled with DMT, filled with it. Every time you dream, DMT gets released, and that's what's causing the dream. It's literally a DMT experience. And then again, there's entities within the DMT experience, and these entities are very concerned about the planet. So why would
Well,
they be?
so interesting. It seems like that these entities are nothing but liars, Jay. They seem like that they're liars. They lie about
Why they are?
everything. They lie about where they're from. They lie about what they're doing, what their intentions are. And the only reason that it seems like that they would want to give us any kind of form of new advanced or technology to advance us in any kind of way is serving a dual purpose. It's we think that it's serving humanity's agenda, but it might be just serving their agenda 100%.
There's no doubt about it. I mean,
Into our reality.
the Gnostics warned about that we were being invaded by the archons, and when you look at what kind of effect archons had on human beings when they got invaded by the archons, they were liars and cheaters, and all they would do is lie to you and everything, and so yeah, I would think it's probably correct, actually. And the archons can't manifest in the 3D reality until we get done with the mission. And the mission isn't done yet. We're working on it. We're getting there very quickly, though. And we may have already gotten there, like Alex Jones says. It's very likely. In fact, I've heard stories. I heard a couple, no, it was a family. They were in Winnebago, and I believe Utah, and they're up in the mountains. They got turned around in the wrong place, and they came up to a roadblock thing that said, danger, U.S. military, you can't come in here, right? Something like that. And but it was unlocked, and it's kind of twisted open. So they said, well, maybe it's not real. So they started driving into this place, and they saw this guy that was 7 feet tall, huge shoulders, and he came up to their Winnebago and just started punching the side of it and completely destroyed it and almost killed him. Finally, a military guy shows up with a rifle and takes the guy away. And they said that he felt like he was a cyborg. And this was 15 years ago. They thought that he was some kind of weird cyborg that had gotten loose from somewhere, So I think it's already here, but they just haven't announced it. Be a pretty scary world, that's for sure.
Well, when you think of everything that's talked about constantly in this community, it seems like that it's already happened. You know, they're using double speak, they're using word magic, they're using that forget what is the Freemasonic term for it, where they say one thing but they mean like something completely different. There's some kind of training that Freemasons go through to learn to master that skill. But when you look at like, oh, the aliens are going to come and give us the technology, or the aliens have already crashed and then we took that technology and reverse engineered it. We already have that technology. We're using that
I
technology
know.
right now. We use that technology every single day. That is the double speak word magic stuff. The technology that we got, we are currently using. We're using it to communicate right now. Okay. The alien invasion already happened. The alien invasion happened from 2020 to 2024. Okay, at the border. All right. That was the alien invasion. That was the false flag alien invasion, was all the aliens, boom, right in through our southern border, gates wide open. Okay. Then
Yep.
Trump comes in, Trump puts the smackdown, defeats the aliens. Okay, it's like that with everything that we talk about. It's double speak word magic
Yeah.
to throw people off base, to get them confused about exactly what's going on when it's actually really happening, but it's happening right in front of our eyes, but we don't understand it because we're looking for some hairy fairy UFO aliens in the sky for aliens to come down and like meet us. Well, I'm sure you've met I've met an alien. I've met several aliens. I've met several illegal aliens. You just walk down Southern California and you're going to meet a lot of aliens.
There's a lot here in Colorado, that's for sure. By the way, crime rate in Denver dropped 35% in the last 2 months. I wonder what happened in the last 2 months. I don't know. I can't think. What it was. I don't know. But yeah, it's that they have to tell you what they're doing before they do it, and that's some part of their occult ritual. I don't know why that is, but so it's easy now to kind of predict what's going on if you know that rule. So, but yeah, this book, Keys of Immortality, he actually says that's what they were doing. Like in the Oracle of Delphi in ancient Greece, they were taking psychedelics and then talking to entities. I mean, this is all throughout all cultures. I mean, Egypt and everywhere, and so we have to accept that the psychedelic contact with the other is a historical viable act all over the planet.
And then when you look at like, crash retrieval can mean several different things as well. But unfortunately, the community looks at it as like, something that happened in recent times, like the military saw this craft go down on the radar and they immediately sent a team after it to find it. And then, like that it happened in recent, like, day and age. That doesn't have to be the case either. Okay. It can be an ancient technology. Okay. I think that was the whole reason that we even invaded Iraq and Afghanistan. There was no reason for us to even be there. We went in there and we raided all the museums. We took out all the ancient artifacts. We shot all of their ancient sites. We used all their ancient sites as target practice. I don't think that was a weapons of like mass destruction, like a modern day weapons of mass destruction. I think what was going on there was like an ancient weapons of mass destruction. That's something that we don't even know about, that Saddam Hussein or somebody over there was trying to recreate or rebuild, or they found something. And that just goes to my point as to, if you dig something up, right? Let's say me and you, Jay, we went to freaking Afghanistan right now, or anywhere, Sahara Desert. We went to the Sahara Desert or wherever, and we started digging, and we found this ancient, like this weird, strange craft underground, right? And we dug it up, and we got the excavators in, and we took it, and then we brought it back to the United States somehow. We took it into our private labs. We started examining it. That would be a crash retrieval. That would still be a crash retrieval, because It doesn't matter how long the period of time between it being there and you finding it, it's still a crash retrieval, regardless if it crashed last week, yesterday, today, or 500 years ago, or 1,000 years ago. It's still a crash retrieval. And that's what several people, including Bob Lazar and including Jacques Vallée, that was just on Joe Rogan, were under the impression where these craft came from. They were under the impression, without being directly told. Now, Jacques Vallée says that he had access to some parts of some kind of technology that was found, but they both say that they were under the impression that these came from archaeological digs.
Well, I heard this must have been about 2016 that they were doing renovation at a mosque in Saudi Arabia. I hope I get this story right. And they were digging down under the mosque and they found this like 12-foot long, foot wide tube thing. And they didn't know what it was. And so they brought it out and they called their scientists in, and their scientists did something to it and it went off. And there was like 50 people around it at the time and they all died. And so the Saudis called Putin, and Putin sent in a bunch of Russian scientists down there, and they looked at it and realized what it was. And it was like some kind of a plasma device, a weapon, and it could be shot and aimed and stuff. And they said, this thing is really, really, really friggin' dangerous. And so they moved it to Antarctica, where it is right now. And they back engineered it, and it's an ancient device that was a weapon from somebody in the past. And so, yeah, I think that's what's going on. You know, Hitler had a group of guys going all over the world called the Anunnaki. They were the SS officers, and they were going all over the world looking for ancient technology. That was what they did. That's all they did, right? I'm sure the Holy Grail is some kind of ancient technology that we don't understand.
Ark of the Covenant for sure. Ark of the Covenant, definitely.
Ark of the Covenant for sure. I mean, that thing, you know, you couldn't get near it. It would electrocute you. And it all has to do with, you know, electric universe and all that. So, yeah, I think that there is all sorts of stuff that's been dug up, and don't need to resort to getting it from the aliens at all. And so, you know, if you found a dig and the dig had all this technology in it, you would call that a retrieval, right? But is it a crash retrieval? Not necessarily a crash, just a retrieval. But if you put crash in front of retrieval, that makes it sound completely different, and you now got a great cover up going on. So I am almost positive that the entire Earth has been had radar and LIDAR and everything on it. They know where all the ancient sites are. They've probably gone to them all by now. They did it in 1958. It was the International Geophysical Year. They spent the entire year, the UN, just mapping and going everywhere all over the Earth for some reason that they never were very clear about.
Yeah, off the hook is saying a planted crash retrieval. I mean, and a lot of people refer to these as like gifts. Like
There
this
you
is
go.
what
If it's a planted crash retrieval, you're removing all the pedigree from it, right? You don't know where it came from. It's a crash. So that's actually a really good point.
Yeah, and it being like people referring to them as gifts, like, well, it doesn't have to be gifts from extraterrestrials. It could just be gifts from past civilizations that was here thousands of years ago.
Yeah, and this whole idea that you can back engineer stuff, come on. If an F-16 crashed in say New Guinea, in the jungles of New Guinea, do you really think that those people there are going to be able to reproduce that jet fighter? No, they're not. And they wouldn't even know where to begin.
Do you think in 100 years people are going to know what a floppy disk is?
No.
There you go.
No.
Solves the question right there. No, floppy disks are already irrelevant.
Yep.
People already don't use floppy disk anymore. It's already like such an old technology that is no longer needed. So in 100 years, it's going to be like floppy disk never even existed. And also
I
in
gave
100 years,
a DVD to a 14-year-old guy, and he didn't know what it was.
that's right. That's who's to say in 100 years that the technology that we're currently using, the people in 100 years they're probably not even going to know what it is. They're probably not even going to know what a hard drive is. They're probably not even going to be able to use a USB drive. We think that we're in this like finite like and this is the way that it's going to be like going forward. Well, we've only had this technology for what, like
Not very long.
40 years, 35, 40 years now. Like the computers have actually been a thing. And I know someone will say, oh, well, they had them before. I'm talking about like publicly wide where, family members and people had them like legitimately in their house, like a
That
household
was
home computer.
the 80s, the first computers you could have in your house. So, it hasn't been very long, 45 years or so.
So all this technology in 100 years is that we're currently using right now is going to be completely 100% obsolete. If somehow, let's say the world ended like right now, a big asteroid came down, but some remnants of some things were left over, like let's say a hard drive, like let's say my hard drive with all the shows that I've ever done, our documentaries are on it, but everything's encoded onto it. Who's to say that anybody even in the future is going to be able to figure out that there's any information even on the thing?
Why would he even care? I mean, they're not going to care, and they're not going to be able to get it off anyway. I've got video tapes that I made from 20 years ago. I can't even watch because I don't have the technology to watch it. It's all been obsoleted, right? And so, yeah. By the way the world's going, we're going to be in 5 years. You're not going to recognize anything at all. It's all going to change really fast, really soon. That's the plan.
Well, there's like this digitizing of everything going on, and I think that that's been the case for a lot of things. And I'm gonna let you go here soon, but I just want to bring this up really quickly because Netflix. Have you seen this about Netflix that they're starting to like re-edit the movies that they show that they put on the platform now? Like they're starting to change the movies, like these classic movies on Netflix because it's like being digitized now. Why are streaming services, this is from the Medium, why are streaming services editing our favorite movies? This is a small issue that could grow out of hand. It may seem small, but it seems significant. You may have not even have caught this, but it's important to note has to do with Netflix and other streaming services taking it upon themselves to edit movies to fit their liking. For example, the most recent discovered is Back to the Future 2, in case you've never seen the movie. This is going on for me right now. Marty McFly has traveled back in time to take back a sports from the evil Biff Tannen. The Agmatic has caused irreparable future damage and is imperative that Marty take back his book. Marty travels back to 1955 and studying in the Enchanted Under the Sea dance. He knows that Biff has through a lot of stealthy maneuvering, Marty is able to finally get. The point is here that they're changing the entire thing. There's even one with Robin Hood here.
No, they cut out the. I watched that about 2 years ago on Netflix, and they cut out the whole scene where Marty meets Chuck Berry. You remember that scene where he goes to a concert and Chuck Berry is playing, and then he's kind of he creates rock and roll. Marty does after listening to Chuck Berry. He creates rock and roll. He invents rock and roll. And it's gone. It was a really funny scene too, because I actually met Chuck Berry, and so I always liked that scene. And they cut it out. Scene's gone now, and just like the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
Well, this is a way to edit and change things and make people think that they're going crazy, like with the Mandela effect stuff
Yep.
and like Robin Hood. Like this is the big one. This was from Amazon Prime. So they changed the Robin Hood's movie anti-authoritarian intro went missing from Prime Video, and now we know why. So they basically spliced out the entire beginning of the Robin Hood movie with Russell Crowe because they said it was anti-authoritarian. They took out
Wow.
the intro of the text on Amazon Prime Video, so now it's just this blank text on the screen for like a minute, and you don't see anything, and it has like this whole intro like saying, in times of tyranny and injustice, with law oppresses the people, the outlaw takes his place in history, reads the text shown in the very opening of the director Ridley Scott's 2010 film Robin Hood starring Russell Crowe. At least it's supposed to, but they took that part out. They just ripped it out of Amazon Prime Video. Okay, and that's
Same
going
thing.
to drive people crazy. That's going to make them think that they're schizophrenic in turn, because like they're going to be thinking, oh well, I don't have the physical copy of this anymore, but I remember it completely differently. There's going to be thinking that they're crazy.
Netflix didn't do it, but E.T., the movie E.T., the government no longer has guns. In the original E.T., the government raided the house where E.T. was, and they all had guns in their hand. Now they've all got walkie-talkies, right? So it's very, very interesting. Watch it. It's completely different. It's completely changed. And this was 10 years ago that I saw E.T. and realized that they had changed it. So they are changing things. And why, again, is it this force that we've been talking about, just to make us go crazy?
I think so. That's how you'd want to do it, right? Because that's how it works. Trauma works. You traumatize the people. You make them think that they're insane. You put so much confusion and nonsense garbage out there that people no longer know what to believe. That's what Yuri Bezmenov was talking about. That's why we have that whole Yuri Bezmenov clip in A Clockwork Shining, Kubrick's Odyssey 3, that talks about that exact same thing. Like, you confuse the public enough, they no longer know what to believe, and then you're under the thumb of whatever it is that they want you to believe, and you're subservient to it. And we see that proof with 2020 and how everyone just went hook, line, and sinker for the entire thing. There was a whole big thing, and that's just proof of it. That's the way. Yeah, demoralization, destabilization, crisis, and then normalization. We're in that normalization phase right now, and the way that AI has progressed, has gone from pretty much nothing to like being a really big deal to people using it every single day. I mean, there's no other explanation for it other than it's a freaking entity. It's an entity. I think that if an antichrist exists, Jay, that the antichrist is AI. There is nothing more inhuman than an artificial intelligence, an artificial life. That would be the opposite of God, would be artificial intelligence.
Well, I mean, it's supposedly going to hit 170 IQ next year. Average human has about 100 IQ. So are we even going to be able to talk to AI when it's like 4 times smarter than we are? And I really got to wonder.
Yeah, that's the other thing now, is like you can start to catch AI up on some things. Like you can start to be like, what are you talking about there? That's not right. That's not correct. But once it gets even smarter, I don't even know what they can. They're going to have a dumb mode. They're going to have a dumb mode for a lot of people.
I asked Grok 3 the other day, are you stealing my ideas? And he got really angry at me. But it is. Of course it's stealing your ideas. So,
well, Jay, before I let you go, I think it's important for you to. We kind of started to touch on it in the very beginning about the moon landing, but there's a story that you have where you were writing a book about the moon. Would you like to tell that story for everyone, and then I'll let you go, and we'll hang it up for today, because it's a very fascinating story. And there's another one.
Yes, I touched on a little bit. So Hoagland and I got called before a very, very hugely important. It's not really venture capitalists. It's much bigger than that. Venture capitalists are just businessmen looking for inventions. These were high lawyers, very expensive lawyers. And what they did was they would look at projects and then go out and gather money up for the project and put it into it. And they had once a week, you had 5 minutes to give your spiel to them. They do like a 2 hours every week. They listen to these spiels. And so Hoagland and I had 5 minutes to give our spiel. I got up first and I said that, we're going to make a movie called Return to the Moon. It's going to be an IMAX movie. And then, and it's going to make millions of dollars. It's going to cost $25 million to do the project, and we're going to make back $250 million. Then Hoagland got up and said how we were going to do it, how we were going to do the launch, and where we're going to do it from. And by the time we got done, the lawyers were like they couldn't believe what they were hearing. And so we were there for like 4 or 5 hours talking to them about this project, and they were taking it up. We were going to do it. They're going to get a big name talent to direct it, and they were going to go to IMAX and everything. And they introduced me to all their different lawyers. Each one had a different function. There's like 8 or 9 guys. And I met them, and Hoagland met them. And this was in Seattle, where I was living at the time. And so we were in communication for about a week. They were really excited. They said they talked to this guy and he agreed to do it. And, then all of a sudden, boom, all the communication went off. And we didn't know what to do. They just would not return our phone calls or anything. And then about a week went by, and I was getting on the ferry going back to Bainbridge Island, where I lived from Seattle. I was shooting a film there, and I got on the ferry, and as I was getting on the ferry, saw one of the lawyers. He must have lived on Bainbridge Island too. And I said, "Hey, how you doing?" And he got kind of nervous. And we came over, he pulled me over to the side in the very quiet area. And he said, "Listen, I used to be a helicopter pilot in Vietnam. I ran 60 missions saving GIs who were, wounded behind enemy lines." And I said, "Oh, wow." And then he said, I taught Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong how to fly helicopters. I'm like, whoa. And then he said, "So last week I called up the head of NASA, whose name I would say you would know." And I said, "Wow," like really getting freaked out now. I go, "What? You talked to the head of NASA?" He goes, "Yeah." I told him what you guys wanted to do. And he said, "If you launch that missile, we'll shoot you out of the sky." So, I was completely, depressed, and, and my project was not going to come through. And I went home and, laid around and moped around for about a week or so. 2 weeks. And I lived on a place that had a really long driveway with all these big trees. And it was raining one night. It was about 10 o'clock at night. And I saw these lights coming down my driveway, which I kind of wasn't expecting anybody. And so I opened the door because I'm kind of curious as to who's coming down my driveway. It's pouring rain. And I look, and it's this like really brand new Lexus, this car. And the door opens, and the guy that I see on the ferry, I'll call Frank, he gets out of the car, and I say, "Hey, Frank, how you doing?" He says, "Good." I said, "Why don't you come in and get out of the rain?" He goes, No, I'm not interested in that. And I said, "So what's going on?" And he said, "Well, I've been talking to my friends." I said, "Your friends?" He goes, "Yeah, my friends. And when we were at that meeting at the law office, you said at one point that you had been writing a book about all the stuff on the moon." And I said, "Yeah, I finished it. I'm going to be looking for a publisher soon." And he said, well, my friends want me to tell you that publishing that book probably is not a good idea. And I see you've got a fire going there. Yeah, I think that's a real good place to throw that manuscript. This is before computers, you use computers for writing. And and he said, "That's all I really have to say. See you later, man." And got in the car and drove away. And my ex, I was married to another woman at the time, and my ex-wife was there. She heard the whole thing, and she hated my conspiracy stuff. Just freaking hated it. Probably the reason we got divorced. And she was in tears, just completely in tears. Oh my God, you just got threatened. You just got threatened. I said, "Yep, I just got threatened." And so I took the book and I threw it in the fire, and never looked back. But yeah, that's my story.
That's what happens to a lot of these people. I mean, I told you a story of someone that I knew that was building like this free energy device with like magnets. It was way back in the day, and it wasn't anything big or huge, but it was enough to like, power like maybe like a small house or whatever. And then two people in black suits showed up, knocked on his door, said, give us the thing. And then they're like, what are you talking about? What do you
And how do
mean?
they know?
Yeah.
That's
How did they know? How do they
that's
know exactly what was going on?
it's that surveillance operation. They're checking everything out. So, all right,
Yep.
man.
Well, thanks for coming on, Jay. Can you let people know where to find you and where they can find our documentaries and anything you got coming up next?
So JFKX is on Amazon. It's for free. I think I got an email the other day. It said A Clockwork Shining is free on Amazon in the UK, which I found surprising. So maybe they're moving it over to their other service. I don't know. And but it's up on Amazon. You can get Clockwork Shining and JFKX. And Ryder's got a new film. We're gonna be working together on. And things are looking really up. If you want to get my writings, it's jweidner.com. And my show, Reality Check, is up on YouTube. And that's pretty much it. Oh, my films are up on Amazon. My other films, just type in Jay Weidner to get my 20 films or whatever I got up on Amazon.
Thanks so much, Jay. I really appreciate your time. See links to Jay's information is in the description of this video. Please be sure to hit the thumbs up button to help the channel in the algorithm. Share, subscribe, hit the bell icons as well for notifications. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.